Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the DI 101 webinar series. I am Jared Evans. I'm the Director of Marketing for Distribution International. If you haven't been to this series before, if you haven't seen one of our webinars, I will tell you that it is an incredible resource offered to our customers, partners, and associates. By partnering with our manufacturers and our industry experts, we will deliver informative presentations about industry trends, new technology, new products, and product applications. In order to fully support our customers, Distribution International offers products and solutions from multiple manufacturers and brands in many product categories. This webinar does not represent an endorsement of one manufacturer or brand over another, but we do pride ourselves in partnering with manufacturers that deliver products of the highest quality to our customers. Today, we are excited to partner with Aspen Aerogels for this edition of the DI 101 webinar series. Today's webinar will discuss solutions to industrial installations' toughest challenges with Pyrogel and Cryogel. The combination of Pyrogel and Cryogel's unique product engineering, format, and versatility have revealed a range of benefits for project maintenance and turnaround work. This webinar will highlight examples of how Cryogel and Pyrogel have been used to de-risk schedules and solve some of industrial installation's toughest challenges. This webinar will be of interest to engineers and contractors working in the hydrocarbon processing industries. Without further delay, let me introduce our presenters. We have Mike Alcorn. He has more than 10 years of experience in the industry. He is a former DI employee that left on good terms, holding a variety of roles, including sales, inside sales manager, and fab shop manager. He is NIA certified inspector, NACE member, as well as a SWCA volunteer and board member. Mike is responsible for the Gulf Coast region, which includes Texas and Louisiana. We also have Chase Tanner. Chase has more than a decade of experience in the oil and gas industry, spanning upstream, midstream, and downstream. He is a member of NACE, NIA, as well as MICA. Chase provides contracting support for the United States with regional expertise covering Appalachia, Southern Midwest, and the Rockies. We are proud to have Aspen Aerogels present today, and we certainly thank them for their time. We will pause for questions at the end of the webinar. To submit questions, please use the Questions tab in the GoToWebinar panel. You can submit your questions at any point during the webinar, and we will answer the questions during that question period at the end. Without further delay, I will turn this over to Mike and Chase.
Hey, thanks, Jared, and thanks for pulling all of this together. So you'll all likely hear this a few times today, but it truly does take a village to make an impact. When I was at DI, Aspen was always a resource for me who looked out for my clients' best interests. Since coming to Aspen, I appreciate the fact that I still have the opportunity to work with several of you who I respect more than you'll ever know. DI has a wealth of knowledge and an ability to respond quickly to the challenges that are not going to stop being thrown our way from an ever-evolving industry. Knowing that I can call Kenny Como, Steve Lavoie, Jeff Murphy, Danny Franklin, and the list goes on and on and on to ask some random questions about something to do with some random application that only time and experience can provide an answer to, that's a nice thing to have. You also mentioned SWCA. So I was challenged to get involved years ago when I was at DI and was talking with someone about how to make things better. And I don't even honestly know if I knew what it meant at the time. I just simply knew that something needed to change. So fast forward a few years, after several individuals worked towards providing some resources that were really valuable, Ralph Parrott asked me to cover the history of SWCA during a short welcome address. What I found when I did my research was that over 60 years ago, the makeup of the industry, well, it looked really different, but their challenges were pretty similar to some of the things that we're facing today. There were labor issues, financial stresses, and a limited number of projects to be had, to name a few. In the face of all of that, several leaders from industry competitors came together to come up with a response strategy to challenging times. So what am I getting at other than a shameless plug for getting involved with SWCA or any of the other installation contractors associations as well as NIA? Well, I'm glad you asked. Anytime that we come together to solve a problem, to better understand our industry, to educate one another, and with a goal to leave better informed and more effective, we've done something of value. So thanks for showing up, regardless of who you work for or what challenges you're facing. Working together is the best way to solve them. So let's get started. Safety is a core value for both DI and Aspen as well. And almost every contractor and facility meeting that I've ever been a part of starts with a safety moment. So we'll keep with that trend. My favorite from my time when I worked in operations was always a beginning of summer season kickoff about a heightened sense of awareness around lawn chores. And that came complete with the plant passing out PPE, some safety glasses, earplugs, gloves, the whole 9 yards. Now, although we're supposed to be close to the end of summer, we still pegged 100 degrees in Houston over the weekend, and I'm nowhere closer to putting up the lawnmower. What I have noticed, though, is that now I'm doing okay to maybe throw on some sunglasses and possibly some earbuds. It's easy to start strong, but it's even easier to let your guard down after a little while. And many of us have spent more time at home over the last several months. And some of us, well, we might have found that our spouses, they missed their calling as a project manager or at least a shift supervisor. Safety doesn't only happen between 7 o'clock and 5 o'clock, or only in the chemical plant, the refinery, or whatever facility you might be used to working at. Safety is just as important at the end as it was in the beginning. So don't forget to use your PPE, have someone hold that ladder, or take an extra moment to consider the task and do it safely at work and at home.
Thank you, Mike, and again, Jared, for helping facilitate today's event. Ask yourself, what has created the great successes between DI and Aspen over the years? What is the driver to that success? You know what it is? It's great partnerships. You may or may not be aware, but many of the solutions you offer come through those entrenched, shared values amongst partners. Distribution International and Aspen Aerogels, frankly, are no different. Partnered as one unit, we've surpassed many milestones together through varied solutions to owners and contractors alike. In fact, Aspen Aerogels eclipsed over $1 billion of total material installed this year, dating back to our start in 2001. How did this happen? Great partnerships and cohesive support. So we'd like to thank everyone who joined today, as it has taken the village. Generally speaking, insulation is often seen as a consumable item or the necessary evil to make a plant run. My challenge to everyone is to change that paradigm. Components within facilities have evolved, and there is no reason insulation should be any different. Many years ago, there was an unspoken challenge to reimagine the role of insulation within the world. Aspen's technologies became the missing pieces to that puzzle. Whether it was CUI performances, mechanical integrity-based requirements, or the challenge to achieve simplicity, Aspen answered that call. In looking back, it's flattering that in so many of the areas pioneered by Aspen, we're now seeing others try to follow suit. So what does that mean to us on the phone? It may look like this: simply answering the phone after hours or working hand in hand on complex solutions, as many times we often do. We as one unit will continue to lead the industry in supporting one another. Having great partnerships enriches your arsenal and greatly increases your opportunity for success in challenging environments. My second challenge for everyone is to see Aspen Aerogels as an extension to your daily activities. That could include some of the following, whether it be rapid mobilization for on-site installation trainings, on-site inspection support, material takeoffs, thickness calculations, material trainings for you and your staff, or even the utilization of the knowledge and expertise offered from seasoned veterans within our tech services. Our on-staff engineers have become some of the most trusted advisors the insulation community has ever seen. They're waiting to work on everything from detailed design through routine maintenance. Rest assured, whatever challenges may be presented, Aspen will be ready.
So our intent here today is to demonstrate where both DI and Aspen provide value in challenging situations. When we started talking about doing this, I reached out to several contractors as well as some DI employees to ask what would be of some interest to discuss. Thankfully, I talked to Jenny Geyer from MIT about a discussion she had been part of years ago that stood out to her, because it's a great example of solutions we both offer for seemingly impossible situations. We had an opportunity to work with Duke University to address their maintenance and performance of their steam supply network that was housed in underground vaults. Not only were the spaces cramped, but they also frequently reached ambient temperatures upwards of 200 degrees because of underperforming or altogether missing insulation due to mechanical abuse. As if that wasn't bad enough, the vaults would frequently flood, compromising steam quality, destroying insulation, introducing CUI, and presenting safety concerns for pedestrians walking around the grates that were steaming from the boiling water below. Now, steam degradation, yeah, that was impacting several users, but that wasn't even the biggest issue. Maintenance workers were not able to work in safe conditions, and no matter what they did, they were going to have to do it all over again the next time they entered that same vault. This demanded a change to the age-old, hey, it's what we've always done way of doing things. So Pyrogel XTE was installed and put to the test. As a part of the system, removable pads were also installed around valves. Now the vaults, yeah, they still flood. I mean, that hasn't changed. But the Pyrogel that was installed is still in place and performing the same way it was on day one. All of the issues are gone, and the maintenance team swears that a ventilation system was installed because of how cool the air now feels. As for the blankets, no matter how many times the vaults flood and are ultimately emptied, the Pyrogel removables are still dry and an integral part of the solution. For those of you who didn't know, DI has a removable cover division called MIT, and they are an outstanding resource for design pads and can create just about anything that the situation requires. A quality solution from a quality provider who can respond to any challenge the industry can throw its way. Oh, and one last thing for Duke. The maintenance staff had been beaten up for years about the large patches of dead grass above the vaults, and the new green lawn, that might have been what they were the most proud of. You never know what's most important to someone, but it's nice to know that whatever the problem may be, we can solve it.
Listen, speaking from experience of being on the road all the time to now being at home, I've spent more time on self-improvement. Case in point, our own podcast. One of my favorites is the Joe Rogan Experience. Joe prepares for everything, as we all should, in order not to fail. On the flip side, though, he states, one of the most fascinating lessons I have learned about life is that struggle is good. Guess what? Our industry is no different. Being so heavily reliant on commodity based cycles, which dictate many of our day to day plans, we must adapt. And let's be honest, the struggle is real. How many times do we devise a fantastic plan to be executed only to have something arise that could sink the ship? Guess what? Our clients are not immune to this effect either. More often than not, they have a great plan leading up to an outage, and then they're hit by a curveball that could unravel all the previous flawless executions. This was the exact case for a Midwest refining client Aspen works with regularly for daily heat conservation scenarios. During this outage, they had a desalter vessel that was insulated for passive fire protection following API 521 guidances. The vessel needed to be stripped of its severely damaged rigid insulation, inspected, and re-insulated. To no one's surprise, the vessel had a ton of CUI that had to be remediated before it could be re-insulated for service. The status quo in planning was we won't have an issue finding this material off the shelf through distribution, and contrary to popular belief, that was wrong. This left the contractor scrambling to find a solution or face the real reality that the plant would have to wait up to 6 weeks to get the rigid material, 1, manufactured and 2, delivered to the site. And by the way, the site would not be allowed to restart until the vessel was insulated to meet the fireproofing standard of API 521. The contractor was very familiar with Aspen support for daily insulation needs and remembered we offered a solution for passive fire protection using Pyrogel XTF. They contacted Aspen directly for support, and we involved our tech services team immediately to calculate a thickness to achieve API 521. They used the plant's accepted environmental factors equating to 30 millimeters of Pyrogel XTF versus the previous thickness of 4 inches of rigid insulation. Knowing Aspen was the only option, the contractor had the plant sign off on the change and procured the material. Pyrogel XTF was on site 4 hours of the initial call, and the vessel was fully insulated, ready to be recommissioned within 24 hours. The ability to quickly assess and adapt to a situation saved this plant a delayed restart because they were able to avoid the manufactured lead time for rigid material and got restarted using Pyrogel XTF. Secondary to the time savings and quick turnaround, the plant has confidence now that the vessel won't have any further CUI or corrosion under fireproofing issues again. Not to mention, future inspections can remove the Pyrogel and be inspected and reused.
So Aspen appeared on the horizon 20 years ago with our aerogel technology that shrunk insulation into a small package, got rid of that pesky water issue by making it hydrophobic, and made it tough enough to stand up to anything that anyone on this call or out in the industry could throw at it. This story demonstrates all of the value Aspen brings to owners, distributors, and contractors alike on a large project. A large project that, by the way, we weren't even specified on. At the same time, DI made a contractor focused supply decision, and they weren't supplying material either. Even though we were not initially successful, we both committed to the owner and the contractor that we would offer support if the need arose. A compressed startup schedule was complicated by interlayer availability and material management. This was a 3-layer, 9-inch system. And if anyone knows anything about fabrication, especially for a large project, getting the interlayer to site first, well, that can be a challenge. It's possible that some of that interlayer actually was on site, but it was buried in one of 100 Connex containers and time was running out. 1 month of downtime was equal to more than $14 million in lost revenue, and they were already several months behind. So, when they realized that they could not make their original plan work, they reached out to both of us. Cut to fit and field fabricated 90s, valves, and flanges, well, those were the only way to meet the demand. Our tech services engineers quickly ran calculations and determined that installing Cryogel with a thickness equivalent to only the inner layer of that 3-layer rigid insulation would perform at 100% efficiency of the originally designed system. The DI network was able to provide 90 rolls of Cryogel out of stock within 6 hours. 60 of those rolls were there within 2 hours. At the same time, DI and Aspen coordinated the rush delivery of another 180 rolls of Cryogel within 3 days. A roll of Cryogel was transformed into any pipe size, any layer, any valve, any flange, any fitting, anything that they could possibly need to move forward and complete the project. On the commissioned train, they taped the outer joints with no jacketing and completed train 3 in record time. In fact, after the first 90 rolls showed up the same day, I gotta admit, I was guilty of thinking that that was plenty of material to work with over the weekend, but the contractor called on Saturday saying that it had all been cut and installed and they were ready for more. You know, contractors are creative and they can work with something whenever they actually have something to work with. It made me realize that the project wasn't being delayed because there weren't enough people or talent wasn't there. Without Cryogel being available and its ability to satisfy one size fits all, crews would still be on site. Instead, the project was completed and the facility is generating revenue with plans for Cryogel to be the only path forward on trains 4 and 5.
You know, in a world full of deadlines, along with the pursuit of precision, we will continue the perfect excuse and postponings one deadline. We at Aspen have seen it in a multitude of ways, whether it's a simple oversight on that new vessel or even when it arrives and looks like it's been rolled here from overseas, all of which affect the final outcome on delivery. In late 2017, Aspen had a contractor who was able to read between the lines, knowing a late release was coming, and began to review that installation strategy. The tower fabricator had promised an initial release date to the insulators of Thanksgiving 2017, and it would have been insulated with 3 inches of rigid material and shipped across the U.S. As fate would have it, Thanksgiving came and went, followed by a new promise date being before Christmas 2017. Keep in mind, this tower had to be on the dollies and ready for its cross-country journey by January 1st, 2018. At this point, the contractor knew he had to make a quick decision and realized the logistics with several hundred boxes of material, not to mention being fully staffed around Christmas, was going to be a big problem. They were able to get a specification change to 30 millimeters of Pyrogel XTE in lieu of the 3-inch material. On the 26th of December, my phone personally rang for them to personally tell me they finally had the tower released to them. Knowing time was of the essence, I mobilized to provide support and oversee the installation. To everyone's disbelief, the contractor fully insulated this 120-foot tall by 12-foot wide tower with 30 millimeters of Pyrogel XTE, jacketed and demobilized the scaffold all in 3.5 days, beating the January 1st deadline to avoid penalties. How large was the crew, you ask? Only 18 insulators working 12-hour shifts. Furthermore, they went from hundreds of boxes of material only to 15 850 square foot rolls of Pyrogel XTE. Again, let this sink in. Hundreds of boxes to only 15 rolls. After completion, the contractor came back and told me they avoided thousands in delayed penalties, and we saved their revenue on the job. If they would have stayed on the original specified course, they would have needed to increase their hours by over 40%, which would have dug into their revenues as well. All in all, this change benefited all parties involved, and the tower was shipped across the country with no issues. It was inspected upon arrival to the site for shipping damage, and again, there was none to be found. Later, the tower was lifted and set into position, and once tie-ins were completed, the tower was commissioned in 2018, and it's been running flawlessly ever since.
So the last story is about a Gulf Coast refinery who needed to reduce costs, something that all of us on this webinar have been challenged with for years and are probably hearing more and more of during current times. Actually, another refiner, Louisiana refinery, sent a request just a few months ago asking for the following: offer any cost reduction, operational efficiency, waste elimination measures, value add products or services that your company can provide to immediately lower our total cost of ownership and benefit both of our parties. Hey, people get hung up on the first part and they just stop reading. But cost reduction, and that includes all of the rest of what they intelligently ask for. And those are value points that Aspen, DI, and industry contractors bring to the table every single day. So at this refinery I was talking about, there was an in-plant initiative to rejuvenate infrastructure and improve insulation while somehow still reducing cost. The pipe rack was deteriorating due to CUI, which resulted from insulating the way that they always had done, so they decided to call Aspen. All of us, the refinery, the contractor, DI, and Aspen, we had to get creative and accomplish the seemingly impossible. Pre-insulation can reduce costs, but also offers a way for owners and contractors to maintain safe operations by bringing less people on site and requiring less structural congestion as well. We decided to run a trial at the contractor's scaffold yard about 5 miles away. 40-foot sections of pipe were insulated with 20 millimeters of Pyrogel XTE. They were metalled and hoisted in the air with slings by a crane. After that, they were loaded back onto the trailer, and site reliability engineers inspected for any damage. And as we expected, there was none. As you can see in the photos, the trial was a success. The pipes were then delivered to the site, again hoisted by cranes with slings into place and fastened at the flanges, with only that small portion remaining to be insulated. All of that work was performed from a JLG or a bucket lift, with minimal to no scaffolding required. Final inspections were performed, and again, as expected, no damage. This would never have been possible had they used the same insulation that they always had used. This strategy reduced costs by more than 20%, and it's the current approach for replacing piping within the facility. Not only were they able to reduce costs, improve quality of insulation, and eliminate CUI concerns, but they were also able to remove considerable safety risks as a result as well. There's a tremendous amount of pressure on contractors to reduce hazards in their workplace, and this is a prime example of how we can accomplish that together.
Going back to my comment earlier and changing the paradigm, see insulation materials as an investment, not just a consumable. We would be remiss if we didn't share a general highlight of our core 4 materials. All of these materials exist due to real historic challenges our industry has faced, and our technology continues to enrich our industry together. We solve some of yours and your customers' toughest challenges, whether maintaining process stability, protecting against CUI, or helping get the project back on track. That's the essence of Aspen Aerogels. If there is one thing to remember from today, it's the fact that Aspen Aerogels has the rich history and many answers to some of the most difficult insulation scenarios ever seen. If you find yourself stuck, turn to Aspen for support. Pyrogel and Cryogel, along with our expertise, will bring you back to equilibrium.
Hey, it's a different world. Doing business is not the same as it was a year ago, and probably not even the same as it was 6 months ago. Changing times call for innovative solutions that provide value for all stakeholders involved, be it the distributor, contractor, manufacturer, engineer, owner, and so on and so forth. It's encouraging to be engaged to respond creatively and constructively during unprecedented times. Let's face it, business will likely never be the same. And doing what has always been done, well, that isn't the answer either. Those who think outside of the box and proactively solve problems will lead the way. And it's a privilege to lead the way with DI. Thanks everyone for the opportunity to present, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, guys. That was incredible. Great job. We have a couple of questions that are in, and while everybody's kind of gathering their thoughts and putting their questions together, as I'm sure some are, I do want to tell everybody that if you haven't done so already, I'm going to do a little shameless plug here. If you haven't done so already, please go to our new website and check out our new online customer platform. We've completely revamped distributioninternational.com, and we added a wide range of value-added features, including our new customer portal called Customer Connect. So go visit the site today if you haven't and register your new Customer Connect account so that you can experience Customer Connect for yourself and begin making your job easier today. So with that said, I hope you guys are gathering your questions together. That was a great presentation. I want to thank you guys at Aspen for that. Really nice job. First question coming up. Person says, I'm really impressed with the Duke job. You mentioned that the Duke steam lines were operating better now, but how do you really know that to be true?
So I'll take that one. Yeah, there's several things. There's, from my comment about the contractor getting in there and saying the place felt cooler and things feel better and the grass is greener, but all that stuff is just that's feelings, and that's fine and dandy. But whenever everything flooded, it was put to the test. They drained the vaults. We went back in with some IR guns and shot up the pipe to see where it was at, and it pegged right on the money where it was supposed to be. And even in addition to that, and this is one of the things that I love about solving problems in the industry, is that, yeah, we fixed that problem, but sometimes we don't even think about problems that exist even further down the line. At the same time, there were plans to add an additional boiler to their infrastructure because they couldn't keep up with the steam demand. Well, that all went away. There was no more issues with that, and they totally scrapped the plans on spending the money on that additional boiler because the one that they had was now performing perfectly. So like I said, sometimes fixing one thing inadvertently seems to fix everything else that's down the line whenever you're using Pyrogel.
Thanks. Thank you for that answer. I just want to remind you, I don't have any other questions in the queue right now. So I do want to remind everybody, if you have a question, use the questions tab there, right there on your GoToWebinar control panel, and submit them that way. We won't, we're not going to use the hand raising feature or unmute people. So submit those. While people, because I know people have more questions than this. So while people are doing that, I will also say that if you enjoyed this as much as I think you did, and you're new to this series, please be sure to go follow us on LinkedIn, and that's the best place to get updates of new webinars that are upcoming and direct links to go register for them. So follow Distribution International on LinkedIn. Also, go check out our YouTube channel, and we will post this and you can see all of our previous webinars that we've done. We record them and post them on our YouTube channel as a resource. So go check that out so you can see some past ones as well. A question came through. Let's see. Does Aspen have a thickness chart that takes thickness of hard covering to millimeter of aerogel?
Yeah, Mike, I'll take this one. Yes, we do have the ability to create a translation from a existing rigid thickness to millimeters. The design though is based off criteria based on individual plants. There's multiple different variables that do take into that. So it's definitely something that is one-off for everybody, and we're definitely happy to discuss further and get into more details outside of this.
And I'll add to that too. Chase mentioned several times throughout his piece that that tech services is a resource, and that's something that we provide. to all of our clients, be it distributors, end users, contractors. I mean, we want to make sure that we partner with y'all in support. It's free of charge, and we want to get as involved as possible to make sure that we offer every bit of support that the site needs.
Another question, it says, I've tried before to bid you guys in my specs and got shot down over costs. Can you help me justify why to use Aspen?
Yeah, so Chase, I'll grab that one. That's one of the things I think that we were trying to address a little bit throughout some of our presentations about where we've saved people on time, labor, even money. And it actually makes me think about another scenario that happened at a refinery that's kind of in the Houston area, a little bit to the east. They had a turnaround that was going on where they had already pre-purchased the material. The material that they purchased was the incumbent rigid material. And great thing about it was there was a young engineer who was on staff who spoke up and he said, we're going to do this work today, and then a year from now we're going to have to do this work again. Well, what's going to happen to that material? And the contractor said, we're going to tear it off and buy new material. He said, well, why don't we use Pyrogel on that? I said, well, we've already bought material for it. I said, yeah, well, how long is it going to take to install that? They said, well, it's going to take 6 days. Well, due to some of the compressed schedule and some other things being behind, I mean, insulation is always the last thing that people think about. That's just the way that it is. They didn't have 6 days. They had 3 days. So the contractor came back and said, you know what, if we use Pyrogel, we can go ahead and get this job done in 3 days. So myself, the distributor, which was DI, contractor, and the refiner, we all got together in one room and talked about the logistics of it. Within an hour, we made the decision that we were going to go ahead and move forward with Pyrogel. The insulation they'd already purchased was $135,000 worth of insulation. The facility was also losing $250,000 every single day. So they decided that they were going to trash that insulation. It was oddball sizes. They couldn't return it, and buy some new material, which was Pyrogel. And the contractor got it on site, or DI got it on site for the contractor within like 4 or 5 hours, I think. They got 90 rolls out there. And within 2.5 days, they had installed all the material, saving 3 days from schedule. And that 3 days of schedule, at least in the refinery's mind, was equal to every bit of $750,000. These are one of those times where I'm like, I love it whenever contractors and distributors engage us and we all work together on things, because I feel like it's easy to be dismissive, but whenever you really get together and work together on something, you can build the narrative about why something is a much better decision and winds up being less expensive in the long run. Oh, and by the way, that young engineer who called it out and said, we're going to have to go in this next year again, they did break into that exact same unit for the major turnaround the following year. They took off every bit of Pyrogel that was used. They did the work that needed to be done, and they put it right back on, which saved additional money from having to buy that insulation again. So there's a case to be made. And, in many cases, in the long run, we are less expensive.
Great. Another question from a pricing standpoint, how does it compare to calcium technology?
Sorry, I was fighting my mic there. As far as calcium technology and everything goes, and pricing, there's variables that do play into it, just as Mike, just discussed there. The biggest differentiator here is, going in designing with a Pyrogel technology that, what you're putting on is what's going to be there, now to indefinitely off into the future. The difficulty is there with other rigid materials is, you can't plan for what's going to happen. You can't plan for what degradation is going to take place, or even when you're going to have to take it off and throw it away. So, that ability to reuse the Pyrogel and also know that what you're planning for is going to stay in a constant state and unchanged, it's a win for the facility, and it's a win for everybody all the way around.
Alrighty. Next question. Let's see here. Going through here. What type of training is offered for new contractors or ones that are new to using Aspen products?
That's a great
I'll
question.
take this one as
Oh,
well.
go ahead.
Sorry, Mike. Being so heavily involved with contractors around the U.S., Aspen is one of the most supportive organizations from a manufacturer that actually is willing to get out and get into the trenches with you guys. You know, we've got 2 on staff insulation specialists that will actually travel the globe and provide training support directly to you guys, whether it's, you know, a new crew or it's a seasoned crew. You know, we're definitely there to help with tips and tricks, and, you know, whatever, you know, we've seen, we're willing to share that knowledge with you. And the biggest thing is Aspen provides all this support at no cost. You know, we're not going to come out and, you know, charge, you know, all kinds of money for us for travel costs and this, that, and the other, or per diem. No, we're committed to you. We're committed to your support. So we're going to show up and we're going to take care of you regardless of what that cost is to Aspen. We're going to make sure it gets done.
Great. Let's see. Here we go. You mentioned process stability. What did you mean by this?
So I'll grab that one. So, you know, process fluctuations within a facility, I mean, sometimes that can make or break lots of things, from breakdown of materials to profitability. I mean, it could be any number of things. Maybe think about there's a facility that's south of Houston, a chemical plant, and they had their steam lines ran in trenches. It was, you know, thousands of feet of steam lines. And in the middle of a rain event, the steam basically would shut down the entire plant, or the loss of steam rather, because there was issues with wet insulation or missing insulation, and it would affect that plant. It's funny, is I have a friend who works at one of their sister plants that's probably 40 or 50 miles away. And I was like, yeah, I was walking a line, steam line went down, as we're going to fix that. And he's like, man, I already know all about that because that shut down our plant too. It's like 40 miles away. It's like, yeah, you have no idea how much we depend on them for some of our feed. Well, fixing that and getting them back online, whenever they have a rain event there, they don't see a single budge in their steam. And both plants remain online. It may not just be steam, it may be any other process, but whenever you put Pyrogel on a pipe, that means that things that are usual enemies of heat, be it, you know, rain, water, mechanical abuse, anything that you could think of to try to destroy insulation, it pretty well goes away. And so what we deliver to the facility and to the contractors is that you don't have to sit out there and address things time and time again. You fix it once and you forget about it, because that's what you need to do to make sure that the plant continues to stay online.
You know, and also to expand on what Mike said here, you know, process stability is a huge thing. You know, say even in the most, you know, difficult area, being a coke drum. Now, I personally have a facility right now who's actually getting ready to re-insulate their coke drums with Pyrogel HPS, just because of the gain in process stability. You know, unbeknownst to several, that additional opportunity to gain or squeeze out just a little more liquid yield out of the coking process, you know, that is dollars back to their bottom line on something that's typically almost a sunk cost to them. So, you know, by them squeezing that out is more than paying for, you know, whatever the insulation cost is. In fact, you know, they've calculated payback periods within a year of re-insulating and frankly doing super insulation thicknesses with Pyrogel HPS. So even going above and beyond what would normally be specified for a standard heat conservation scenario.
Alrighty, next question. We had a lot roll in, so hopefully we can. We're going to try to get to all of them. If we can't get to your question, we will email you later this afternoon. I'll email you and I'll copy our panel here and try to address your question offline. So next one. Have you seen success retrofitting systems?
Yeah, I mean, quite a bit. You know, probably one of our biggest advantages is the fact that we are considerably thinner and still capable of performing at a high efficiency from a thermal perspective. So that means that, you know, in some of these facilities that, I mean, one that comes to mind was built 100 years ago, and over the last 100 years, they've added on top of it and added on top of it. All that piping and equipment in there looks like one big spaghetti bowl. So sometimes trying to do what they had always done 100 years ago no longer works anymore. So being able to insulate around clashes, sometimes that's not even just facilities that are that old. We have brand new builds that look great on paper, but once they get in there and start trying to insulate around some of these clashes, they're like, well, we can't do it. This facility won't even run with the insulation that we have on it. So being able to solve those problems, get in there with something that has a much lower profile and allow people to get online and back to work, it's kind of something that we solve too.
Sorry, I did not unmute myself. I was just sitting there, read a whole question. I will read it again. Sorry about that. Is there a recommendation on leaving Pyrogel XTE XTF exposed without jacketing? I have seen Pyrogel applied at a refinery in the Midwest, and the Pyrogel was left exposed in an outside environment for more than 12 months, and the material's integrity was still solid, wasn't wicking water, and had the same thermal and K value performance as the day it was applied.
You know, as far as jacketing and everything goes, Aspen, we're not going to downplay, having a good system. Imagine a chain, right? You've got in this scenario 3 links to the chain. You've got a coating, you've got Aspen, and then you've got a jacket. We're not going to downplay the properties of any 3 of those. But, to answer the question truthfully, we have seen in a multitude of scenarios, not at just one plant, where people have left Aspen's material unjacketed for a multitude of reasons. Whether it's, they're trying to save time in an outage and they're going to come back and they're going to re-insulate after startup, or they're just, they've got to quickly get something back up there as a quote unquote temporary band-aid so they can actually maintain some sort of stability while they're going through and doing something. But I personally had a Midwest refiner last year that actually had a scenario where they were in turnaround and it was one of the wettest springs on record, and we actually eliminated off their schedule close to 2 weeks because of the fact of they were able to continue insulating the pipe and equipment all through this rain. Now, granted, if there was lightning, they had to evacuate, but as long as they were safely to do so, these guys continued to maintain production, maintain insulating through the weather and Mother Nature, and went back after startup and rejacketed all the material post start. And guess what? There was absolutely no wet material. There was no water ingress all the way down to the piping or vessel substrate. So, that was that plant's first particular go with Pyrogel, and that personally changed them to only use Pyrogel and only allow Pyrogel into that plant. And they've accepted the removal of other incumbent materials that have been there historically.
I'll also say as a caveat to that, both Cryogel and Pyrogel XTF can serve as fireproofing. So in the event that someone is going to satisfy a fireproofing requirement with either of those materials, a part of that system is stainless steel jacketing, and that does need to be installed to be able to take credit for either API 521 or UL 1709. So just a note on that the stainless steel does need to be installed over those.
All right, I think we got about enough time for let's say 2 more. We try to keep these webinars about 45 minutes to be respectful of everybody's time. Next question: is aerogel blanket similarly effective in resisting the transmission of water vapor as it is to liquid water?
So is there any way to get clarification on that to see if are we talking about hot or cold service? And,
Let's
and we can
see.
take it offline too if that'll bog things down.
Yeah, Maurice, if you can send a little more detail around that, we'll come back to it. Next question: how is CUI prevented with aerogel?
I'll grab that. Sorry, here I am fumbling around with my mute as well. So, as we kind of mentioned a few different times throughout this, that Pyrogel and Cryogel are both hydrophobic, but it's also breathable too. So, our technology allows for us to withstand any of the enemies that the environment can throw at it. We're not going to absorb water or let water pass through, but at the end of the day, water that's what it's trying to do. It is doing its best to try to get down onto the substrate, down onto the pipe, or down onto the equipment. And as soon as that equipment or piping is fired up to 1 degree above ambient, we're going to allow that water to vape and then pass back through it, keeping everything dry. So, I mean, key to staying away from CUI is of course keeping things dry, and that's what we offer, and that's what we bring to the table.
Great. And I think that probably falls in line similarly to Maurice's question. And he did come back and added that he was referring to hot conditions, i.e. immersion, when he's referring to the transmission of water vapor. So he's saying, is the aerogel blanket similarly effective in resisting the transmission of water vapor as it is to liquid water, i.e. in hot conditions such as immersion? Does that help?
Yeah, so from a look of what Pyrogel is, and kind of what Maurice is getting at here, or at least what I feel. The biggest thing is Aspen is still an open cellular material, but we are vapor permeable, but we're not water penetrable, if that makes sense. So basically, our porous structure of what Pyrogel is will not allow water in its full form to be able to pass through. But it can actually, if water does ingress all the way through, it can actually eject out in the form of a gaseous stage like vapor.
Great. I think that's it. We'll wrap it up on that one. Thank everybody for attending. Thanks to Aspen for putting on a fantastic presentation. To our customers on the call that are on the call, we thank you for your business. To our other manufacturing partners that are on the call, we'd love to do one of these webinars with you as well. To all the DI people on the call, thank you for being a part of the DI family. With that, until the next DI 101 webinar, thanks and have a wonderful day.
Thanks again, Jared.
Thanks, guys.